And so I think it's important that you understand the clinical trial process. I'm not saying that the pill is bad. I just want you to think about how to make health decisions for yourself. You want to be especially vigilant, especially staying on top of it. Once I got the information I needed, I started to move in that direction about how to make health decisions for yourself.
In your mind, what would you say to brothers that's not vaccinated, or just people in general?
I'm glad to hear you are protected, and thanks for being so honest here on Keeping It 100, because that's what we do. Hey, welcome to Keeping It 100, where we have these open and honest conversations to make sure you have the information you need to make good health decisions. I'm your host, Dr. Kristin Motley, and as always, we have a great show in store for you today. Let me bring in my co-host, who's going to be in front of the scenes, behind the scenes, Dr. Ty Thomas, on double duty today.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, girl. George is probably caught up. I know that it's the end of the school year and them kids probably acting all the way out. So hopefully he can hop on and hopefully everything is okay at the school. But yeah, so I just kind of wanted to start off by just reminding everybody that the CDC is recommending and repeat the second shot of the new booster. So there was a new booster that was released in September. If you are above the age of 65, or if you have a weak immune system, you're immunocompromised is what they say. It is recommended that you get a second booster of the new booster. I don't even know how to word it because it's just too many boosters. Like, they need to come out with some wording. There was a booster released in September. It was the Omicron booster. Most of those people should have gotten that. They may not, or they may not have. If you did get it and you're 65 and older, or you have a weak immune system, there's another shot that you should get. It's the same thing, but you have to get boosted again because of your age and because you have a weak immune system. Your protection just kind of slows down and fades away over time. So if it's been 4 months since your last dose and you're 65 and older, then they're recommending you get it. Or if you have a weak immune system and it's been 2 months since that last dose, you should get another shot. Do you have any recommendations on how to better set? I have to figure out, Dr. Thomas. I
can't even think of it. I guess the thing I would just add is that, like, weak immune system can mean, like, even if you're taking medicines that can change up your immune system. So like medicines for, what is it, like rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's, like any of those ones that say, steroids as well, but any of those ones where it's like an immune mediated disease and you're taking the biologics, some of those can alter your immune system. So some people may not realize, because they may say, oh, I don't have, whatever, this immune compromise. So I think the big thing is, if you are on those medications, just call your doctor and see, do you fit that category? And then ask them, because I feel like the 2 months versus 4 months is so hard. Like, if you're 65 or older, but the immunocompromised, a weak immune system one is like a little,
That's a really good point. And I don't know, but I just assume that people know if they're immune compromised. But you're right, they probably don't. So definitely contact your primary care doctor, because they should know all the medications you're taking, and they can take a look and see if you qualify for that. That's a really good point, because I just assume people that have weak immune systems, they know it, but they may not realize that because of the drugs that they're on, it makes their immune system weak. So thank you, Dr. Thomas. Thank you for that health literacy moment. I thought I was the health literacy queen. Wait a minute.
You are.
No, that was, I really do appreciate that. And then people who have multiple diseases, chronic diseases like heart disease and diabetes, cancer, you are already at a higher risk. So if you meet the age range of 65 or older, or have that a weak immune system, plus you have those other chronic diseases, it really put you at a compromising position, you want to make sure you stay up to date on your boosters. I actually did a talk for a group of seniors or older adults earlier this week, and I, just to provide them with the update. And the question that kept coming up was, if I already got two shots, do I still need another one? Or if I already got 4 or 5 or 6, do I still need another one? And so I had to explain, it's not about counting the doses, it's about looking at the time, because typically we count the doses, but with COVID, it's just a lot going on and a lot changing. Yeah. So I had to explain to them, you don't have to count your doses, you just need to know when was your last shot. And you use that to determine if it's time to get another one. So I know one lady's going out right now to go get mine. I was like, okay, girl.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
So that's that. I was looking at an article this week, and it talked about how Black men with metastatic prostate cancer, so it's spread throughout the body, are more frequently to refuse chemotherapy. And that really stuck out to me. Of course, just kind of doing this health equity and health disparities work, it just made me wonder, why are our men refusing chemo when it's the first line of treatment? It's the first thing that you do if the cancer has spread. Dr. Thomas, what you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. Patients I've had the privilege to work with over the years. It's a heavy lift to even get them to think about chemo. And I mean, I've had at least one patient over the past couple of years who forgot which cancer it was, but the first chemo went fine. The second one, it didn't go so well. And he was ready to say, this isn't working, can't do it. And I don't know if for some people, it's like, okay, if this thing is bad, but this other thing they say that is bad, but I just don't know if it's really this bad or not. It's just kind of just trying to let them know to say, you got to stay through it. It'll get a little bit bad. It'll get better, and just building that trust. And, if they hear it from enough people, that's the other thing I've noticed. When people hear it from more people, like outside of like different circles of their lives, then they're more likely to believe it as well. So, but I must say, I wasn't surprised when I heard that statistic. So.
Yeah, and I think that having insurance is another issue. There are people that I imagine can, hear the diagnosis, but don't have insurance, or have insurance and can't afford co-pays and deductibles. And so it costs too much money. And so they're like, I'm not paying for this. So then they don't get the treatment. And it's so unfortunate to be in a great country like the United States that people cannot afford to get the treatment they need to save to save their lives. It's embarrassing, actually.
But the other thing too, when you think about it with chemo, like you get to the point where if you're a person who's been really relatively healthy, not had any major illnesses, chemo like kind of puts you in a chronically kind of, I feel bad for when I first get the chemo, then about 2 weeks usually chemo is like every 2 weeks or so. So you feel really bad those first couple of days. Then when you're starting to feel better, it's like, I got to do that again. So for someone who's not used to being sick, which again, I don't want to get too technical, but for men, like kind of, they're used to being like strong and like, not needing any help. Like that whole prospect of, what do you mean? Like I need help, or I'm going to be sick for these days. Like, it's just like and it doesn't make sense, but they rather than say, I'm not going to go through that. I'll just see what happens with the disease. So it's just so much psychology and stuff there as well. Yeah,
that's really true. And I think that if we can come up with some strategies to better support our men around those, especially since everything you said is so true. And I think it can be addressed. We just have to be proactive and address it, and let the men know what to expect and how they can expect to be supported by their friends and their families, colleagues, their healthcare providers, and provide them with what they need to get them through the period. Because our men as well have higher rates of death when it comes to prostate cancer. And this is one of the signs. I always thought that it was because it just wasn't diagnosed in time. But if you take that and then you look at the fact that they don't want the care, the treatment option, it makes sense why we're highest risk of like death for prostate cancer. All right, so we got some work to do. Let's get to work, Dr. Thomas. Let's get to work.
Sounds like a grant. Need to get a grant and do
I
like
know.
a study. Go talk to some men in the community.
Yeah.
Find out what's going on. Yep.
Anybody want to fund that? Come holler at me. We're gonna do it. We're gonna do the work for sure. In case anyone didn't know, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So we are talking all things mental health every week this month. As many of you may know, especially if you are in the Chester community, 2 children tragically lost their lives over the weekend. They were playing on the train tracks and were struck by a train. It was just the saddest thing as the news started to spread around the community, and our hearts and prayers are definitely with the friends and the families of those 2 children. Chester is a close-knit community, so like everybody knows everyone. And so I wanted to discuss how to cope with grief, especially from the sudden loss of a child. So when I thought about who would be a good person to speak on that topic, Miss Pat Trippley Demiranda immediately came to mind. She has her own testimony and has done incredible work in the community to help parents and families deal with this issue. So I asked her to come on and share her journey. So Miss Pat is here with us today. She is the co-founder of the Trippley Foundation and the founder of Camp Encouragement, which is a grief camp for children. Thank you so much, Miss Pat, for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So I just wanted to just start out by talking a little bit about your experience with grief and losing your incredible son and how it has impacted your life.
Well, I tell you, it was the worst experience I ever had in my life. And because of the suddenness of it happening, he called me and told me he was on his way home. And my son was murdered on Easter Sunday. So he was on his way home to come home to eat dinner for Easter. And he never came home. That was one of my mountains that I had to get over, because I would always cry out about, you promised me that you were coming home and you didn't come. And that was a big mountain that I had to climb. Grief is, I've lost my mother. I lost my mother 2.5 years ago. So I was prepared for her to pass on because of the fact that, she just got sicker and she got lower and lower and lower. But the suddenness of it just threw my whole family, my body, threw us all out of whack. And it took us a long time. My issue always was why this happened to me? Why did I have to be the person that have to deal with this kind of loss? There's so many other kids out here. You look at the drug dealers and you wonder, well, why aren't they out? Why didn't they lose their life? And why did my son had to lose his life? It was a struggle. It was a real hard struggle for our family. It really was.
I see that, and I see you tell this story. I mean, you've been telling the story for a very, very long time, and it does not seem to get easier. I know that this is a very, very long process, but for you, how did the healing process begin? Because I know you've done a lot in the community to help others, and you had to come to a place in your own self before you can help anyone else. And it's not that you're all the way there, but you had to get to some point to be able to, start the foundation and to do the incredible work that you do. How did that healing process begin for you?
Well, first I had to accept the fact that he was not coming back.
Mm.
You know, I had to accept that, you know, no matter how low I was, I had to accept it, you know, that he wasn't, you know, coming back. And that was one of the biggest challenges for me, was to accept that he wasn't going to come back. And it took me a while, took me almost a year to really, you know, start seeing the light, because I was in the darkness for a long time.
Wow.
And, you know, hugs and kisses and, you know, family members being there for you. But it just took me a minute. It took me a while to really accept the fact that he was gone. I spent a lot of time in his room, looking in his room, wouldn't let anyone else come in the room, because of the fact I wanted to try to keep it the same way he had left it. So that was a long period of time that I just went through, just looking in the room and thinking about him, and wondering why this had to happen to me. Just, I thank God for God. You know, God. I spent a lot of times in, you know, going to Bible study and reading the Bible, and that helped me in a lot of ways to, you know, find comfort in the death of my son. But it's a hard road. My son has been dead 19 years, and I still struggle with some, you know, portions of grief. I still and don't let, just like the two children that were killed on the train track. As a parent who's lost a child, anybody who's lost a child, it comes back. You know, you relive it. You know, you think about the parent who's lost their child, and before you know it, you're back on to the same things that affected you during that time of losing your children. And I think about especially the parents in Texas who lost their children at the schoolyard. I cried for almost a week, because all I could think about was those parents who were coming home to look in the room at their daughter's or son's room and realizing that they were not going to come home.
Yeah.
That's a hard pill to swallow for a parent. You raise your children. You know, they have certain smells, they have certain likes, they have certain dislikes, and now you know, they're not there to tell you, Mom, or I only want to eat this, or you know. So it's hard. It's very, very difficult. It's very difficult.
Thank you so much for sharing, Ms. Pat. I did not grow up in the Chester area, so I've never heard your story. So I appreciate and feel blessed to be able to hear kind of what you're doing in the community. And you had mentioned earlier that, you know, you had lost your mom, and you said it was a different process because she was sick. And I guess I'm just wondering two things. So how is it different losing a child? And then also, how is it different knowing that someone, you know, took his life? I guess I can only imagine that's something to process. So,
well, you know, it was difficult. It was very difficult for me, because at first, you know, you hear people in the street, and people let me step back. When you lose a child especially with my particular situation, my son was murdered by a friend. He wasn't murdered by some guy that he didn't know. Him and this young man was walking down the street together, and he kind of told him to get out of the way. So my son crossed the street, and he was shot in the back of his head. The young man who killed my son didn't mean to kill my son. I know he didn't, because of the fact that they were friends. They were walking with each other, walking home, and the gentlemen who were after this young man jumped out the car, and that's where all the confusion came into play. And my son was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. So I knew that it took me a while to forgive him because, oh man, I wanted him to get life, death penalty. I wanted all that for him, because how dare you take my son away from me and from my daughter's brother. And so when we went to court, I was able to talk to him and to tell him that I had forgiven him, because I knew that he didn't mean to kill my son. I really didn't. And know that no matter what happens in the streets know. And my son was killed on a Sunday, and Monday, someone was coming to my house to tell me that they had the young man who killed my son, had him in front of him. And all I had to do was make a decision on whether I wanted him to live or die. And I told him that that was not my decision. That's God's decision. I'm not God. And it took 5 years from that date before they finally captured him. But, I waited on God and let God take care of it. And he took care of it. He definitely did.
He always will. He
Yeah,
always will.
Yes.
It's hard to
Trust him.
remember that when you're hurting and
Yeah.
the pain, and it's like you just can't see it. But once he can just come into your mind and you can remember that he is going to keep you and get you through it, it helps. I know it has to help.
He will comfort you, and he will shield you from all the craziness that's going on, because when things like this happen to you, you get phone calls about all kinds of situations, and they were doing this and he was doing that, and people coming up with so many different scenarios. And that's where you got to really trust in God and lean on his word, that he will carry you through the worst time of your life.
Absolutely. You mentioned your daughter, Jovan, and so I imagine this had an impact on her. So I wanted to ask you, what is the impact that a sudden loss like this could have on siblings? Because we don't talk about the siblings all the time. We talk about the parents, but not the people who are sometimes closest to the person that's lost. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Jovan, she really struggled with the loss of her brother, because she was dependent on me for comfort. And I couldn't comfort her because I was so much in my pain. So I just really and I really kind of pushed her away. This is my pain. Nobody else can feel like the way I feel. But that's her brother. And why she should feel and be crying and reaching out to me. Children reach out to their parents. But when you're broken into, you really don't see your child. And I want parents to understand that your husband, your children, it affects the grandparents, the uncles, it affects them all. And my daughter, because of the fact that she was reaching out to me, and she had some other issues, that she ended up going to the streets, and she got addicted to drugs. And I knew that something was going on wrong with her, because she was going out all kinds of times of nights, and she had lost a lot of weight. So a dear friend of mine I talked to her about it, and I told her I was really kind of concerned about Jovan. And so she took her out to lunch, and my daughter was doing everything you could think of in the drug world.
Wow.
So thank God for my church, and Mount Pleasant Baptist Church and Ezekiel Baptist Church in Philadelphia. They had a drug ministry, and they worked And in 48 hours, my daughter was sent to rehab in Connecticut. And
Wow.
she's now 12 years clean and doing really great.
Go
That's
Joanne.
great.
That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
And we have that's one of my ministries is Jovan's Healing Center. And I had to talk to her about it because you putting your children, you're putting someone's personal information out there. You're talking about them, and you want them to be on the same page as you. So it took us a while before we put it out there, and then but she even comes on, on Thursday nights and talks about her gives her story. And it's a grief program for adults who've lost their loved ones, and it gives them a chance to come on. We have a Dr. Jamie Eady, who is our therapist, who comes on with the families, and they get a chance to talk about the loss of their loved ones.
How can people sign up for that? That's incredible.
All they have to do is go onto our website, which is www.willtrippley.org. And there's a link there that they can be able to click on and to be able to get to Jovan's Healing Center, or they can call me at 267-991-4546. And then I can help you that way as well. And it's always the second Thursday of the month, and it's from 7 to 8.
Is it in person?
No, it's virtual. It's virtual. It's not in person because when we first started, we started it when it was during the pandemic. And I have to come up with a plan that I can be able to do it in person because our therapist is in Philadelphia.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's I don't know if she would be able to make that. But Anitra Green was our therapist for about a year and a half. Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to ask, do you think it's important for people to seek professional help? I know that a lot of people, especially in our community, we don't, generally speaking, we haven't embraced the I have a therapist culture, but I think we're starting to come around now. But especially for grief, how important is it that a person, try to connect with a therapist?
You cannot maneuver through this grief without someone to talk to. And just for them to listen to your story, just to cry out, just a place that you can go and cry. I remember when I first started my journey, and we had Mothers in Charge. And Mothers in Charge was a place where we as parents could come, bring pictures of our children, and just cry and talk about our sons and daughters. Because, when you lose a child, no one really talks about them anymore. So they put them on the shelf, and then they don't know how to address you with it. So they just don't talk about it. But Mothers in Charge was a great place for us to come and talk about our loved ones. And Nicole Cogdell, she's a really good friend of mine, and she helped me because she was the president of Mothers in Charge at that time. And she's also the person who helped me with my daughter when my daughter was going through. She was the catalyst to help me get Jovan the help that she needed. So that was where I really first started my therapy. But then I also did Grief Share, which is another place where I was able to go to and learn how to maneuver through your grief through the Word of God. And that was good for me. But I tell you, everybody, you can't do it. You're in such a dark place. that you cannot make it out. You're in the bed all the time. You're crying. You're asking all those major questions. Why me, God? Why did this have to happen to me? What have I done in my life that's caused you to do these things to me? So you got all those why questions, and you can't answer those why questions without the help of a therapist to help you through.
Well, can I ask, just as a follow-up to that, so what can friends and family who maybe aren't therapists, but they know like the benefits of therapy, how can they show up and be present when, you know, grief, like you said, it's just always, you're just in this dark place. What can friends and family do to be supportive and kind of help get a person in grief connected with the support that they need?
Well, you know, when you lose a loved one, and after the funeral, people don't come around anymore. You don't hear from anybody. Those hundreds of people that were there, no one is around anymore. So just a phone call. Pat, how you doing? Oh, I'm doing okay. Or I'm coming over, bringing something for you to eat.
Don't ask, just come.
Yeah. You know, I know you haven't eaten 9 times out of 10. You haven't. Just to be able to have that special friend. I had a girlfriend of mine who would come over and just look in the door, Pat. And if I didn't answer, then she would come upstairs. I know where you're at. You're in the bed. Come on downstairs.
Oh, wow.
You know, come on down here. Come on down and sit and talk. Or, you know, those kind of things. So, you know, we need the comfort of a dear friend. You know, and the thing about it is that just, you know, kind of ask us about our son. That's my son's picture in the back. And just ask us something about our child. Oh, it just makes us feel like $1 million, you know? You know, he's not here anymore, but what did he like? What was his favorite food? What were some of his goals and you know, for his future? You know, those kind of things, you know, but just to be in that space to help them maneuver through. You don't even have to say anything, you know, just come in. I know what you're here for. Come on in here, you know. Let me just lay on you and cry, you know, because if they're real friends, they'll let you cry and they'll comfort you as you maneuver through. Because sometimes in those bad moments, sometimes you just want to cry. You just want to cry.
I'm really glad you shared.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you keep going, because I'm taking this all in, because this is really helpful, because people always want to know, you know, how do you help a grieving person? And we don't always know. So this is so helpful. So please continue.
And sometimes I feel like people are afraid to say the wrong thing, so they don't do anything. And I think we have to get past to say, okay, the person might yell at me, or it might feel like it was the wrong thing to say. But what I'm hearing is that being there and just being present, like, is just so much more important than if you know, say something that you think you might say something wrong. It's better to say it and show care than just to be waiting to be invited to come and provide support. That's what I'm hearing. I hope I got that right.
That for me was really important, you know, because, you know, our children are lost, are gone. But just the fact that you're even asking about them, that's worth $1 million.
Awesome. Tell us your favorite memory of Will.
I
remember he used to walk fast, and he just always had like a soccer ball. He was always smiling.
Yes.
Like he was always smiling, and he used to just walk fast, like he was going somewhere.
He was always smiling. I tell you what, he loved to eat. He had the longest eyelashes. And he used to always pluck at them. He would, like, now women with eyelashes, they would have loved his eyelashes because he was like, they're so long, because they would turn in. He would pull them out. He would constantly pull them out. He had the best smile. He was so comforting. And, you know, I was just, he was always the if there was a party, he was the life of the party. He was always the life of the party. And he was the kind of person that loved everybody. He went to Trippley School, and it was very few African Americans at that school. So he was, I always, me, you know, Chester, I'm Black Power, you know, I'm all that, you know, and he's like, Mom, it's not like that. Please don't come up there, you know. Please. I said, okay, Bill, I won't do that. And there was a situation where, and I've never, this is the first time I've really publicly talked about it. And him being an only African American young man at that particular school, his friends, they were going to a party. I took him to the particular area, and the police stopped. They stopped. They didn't come to a complete stop at a stop sign. So they pulled him over. He was the only African American. Asked for his ID. Had the Chester address on it. Pulled him out the car. Handcuffed him. Patted him down. Accused him of bringing the drugs because they were smoking pot. Accused him of bringing the drugs and whatnot. Took them all to the police department, my son and two other young men. And I had just gotten home from taking him to that Little Marion area. I had to go back and pick him up. And the best part about it, I'm still very close to these two young men, is that they said that they were the ones who had brought the drugs, and that Will didn't have anything to do with it. But because he was Black, and because his address, his ID said Chester, they assumed that he was the one who did it. And it hurt him. He cried all the way home. He just couldn't understand why, you know, those things at that particular situation had to happen to him. But I told him, I said, you know what? You as a Black man, you got so many marks against you, and you haven't even lived your life, but you being a Black man in a predominantly white area, these are the things that happen. So he held that up pretty tough, but that was a rough time for him. I really felt bad for him because he was trying to fit in. You know, he's from Chester. I think it was his freshman year. So he's not used to that kind of stuff. And oh my God, it was a tough time. But he loved to eat and was a really excellent soccer player. He was an excellent soccer player. And I still look at his tapes sometime at some of his games just to see him running up and down the field. And the pleasure for me now is the fact that the kids are playing soccer in the city of Chester, and they actually have games. And that was always his wish. He used to cry about the fact that no one from Chester would ever see him because of the fact that he played soccer, but it wasn't in Chester. It was always in Nether Province or Downingtown, some places where, you know, and that bothered him. He used to worry about that. He always thought that no one would ever know him and the type of kids kid he was. And here we are, 19 years in death, and we're talking about it. So I'm sure he's up there saying, there go my mom again.
She made it happen.
Me. Yeah.
She made it happen.
Yes.
I wanted to talk about the nonprofit you started, the Trippley Foundation, and the collaborations you've made, and the soccer program. I know you do a running program because my children are enrolled in a running program. It's every Sunday, y'all. So if y'all have kids, come out to Widener on Sundays, 12 o'clock or 12:30. I think it was late. We was late the first week. So yeah, 12
It was,
o'clock,
it was 12 o'clock.
Widener. It's only $5, which is amazing. And it's a fun, just way to get the kids out, to do something healthy, community, and get a t-shirt and snacks. And I mean, it's a good time. So Miss Pat, talk to us a little bit about the soccer program, at least.
Our soccer program is Chester City United. We play down at Chester Charter Scholars Academy down at 1500 Highland Avenue. We practice on Mondays and Wednesdays, and on Saturdays there are games. And we have collaborated with the organization by the name of Swag, who schedules all the games. And we have about 15 kids that are really playing. The practices are from 5:30 to 7. And what we take kids, it doesn't make a difference. I don't want anyone to feel as their child could not come. We furnish shirts, shin guards, the shoes for the kids to be able to play, and it's at no cost to the family. So just come on down and just, if you have a child that's interested in playing the game of soccer, it's a lot of fun. And it's a thinking sport. Okay, it's a thinking sport. And it's a lot of running. But once you get at a certain age, you can really see the story that the kids are projecting when they're playing the game of soccer. And then we have our camp encouragement program, which is our grief camp for children between the ages of 6 and 12. And this year we started with 3 days, 3 days a week. Now we're at 2 weeks. And we are taking the kids to different things. We take them to Thorncroft. I can't never can say that word, but it's a horse farm for children. And they learn. And in the fall, they go out and they paint and go to the farm. And then in the fall, we teach. They go out and learn how to go horseback riding. We have gone to the Barnes Museum. This year, we're going to Franklin Institute. And our therapist, Kia Motley, will be there all throughout the camp to talk to the children about their grief, because sometimes it gets a little heavy for them. And, they need to have someone there that can, help them through their grief, and know that children, they lost their father, their mom. They need counseling too. So don't think that the kids don't need counseling. And I want to say this to the parents: you're bringing kids to us, to the camp, because you're concerned about their grief. What about your grief? What about your issues? If you want your children to get well, you need to get well too. So please do that. And then we have our Healthy Kids Running program. We've collaborated with the Healthy Kids organization out of Westchester, Pennsylvania. And the kids run 5 Sundays in a row. And we take kids as young as 2 up into high school. And we have, they run, and then we give them all kinds of little treats. We got some new treats for this Sunday to give to the kids. And at the 5th and final race, then we put the children and track them first, second, and third place for whatever 50-yard dash, whatever competition they were in. It's a lot of fun. And I'm just grateful to do this. My son didn't die in vain. And I want to thank my son's friends, Neil Regino and Adam Milberg and Mike Barr, who was his soccer coach, David Pine, all those guys that when my son died, they said, Pat, he was a good kid. We just can't let him die in vain. We got to do something. So we got together, and we're still doing it. And I'm grateful. I'm really, really, really grateful. And camp encouragement is at Mount Pleasant Baptist Church. And the thing about it is that last year this time we didn't have any children registered. This year we already have 10 children registered.
That's great.
So it's going to be a fun time. We're really looking forward to it. We got a lot of things. We're taking them to Spice Bush Monastery School in Glen Mills, and that's going to be outside. We're going to be doing some gardening and sort of farming and some outside work. Because, you know, we live here in Chester, and our children don't go outside enough. So we're going to take them outside and do some gardening, and we're going to the horse farm. And we have one of my board members who is an artist. He creates art through, I don't want to say it like this, but through trash. And so they're going to be going around picking up things in the community, and then they're going to do some artwork and do their final display, creations on our last day of camp. So we're just looking for a good time for the kids.
That's incredible. You know, your one organization is offering so many resources and support for the community. It's absolutely incredible. If anyone needs to contact Ms. Pat and wants to learn more or get connected to her organization, her contact information is in the chat. So please, please, please reach out to her. Ms. Pat, thank you. Thank you for being willing to come on the show. I know we talked about this for a while, and I was like, oh, this is where it needs to happen today. So thanks for making yourself available and for being so willing to share and for helping us help people who are in grief.
Thank you.
Oh man, I tell you, just a smile on the kids' faces, honey. That to me is the best joy, to see them come in. We had one kid who lost 3 family members, and they were murdered: father, grandfather, uncle.
Oh, man.
And he came to us and he wanted to commit suicide. And so we were able to help him maneuver through his grief. And I went to the Boys and Girls Club for an event about a month ago. And he saw me. He said, "Miss Pat, I miss you. How are you?" Gave me the biggest hug. I thought I was just going to pass out. And I said, "Boy, what you been doing?" He told me what he was doing. And I said, "I'm just so glad to see you." And it just lets me know that the work that we're doing is not in vain. And that these babies are maneuvering through their grief. And just know that a grief is just not necessarily the loss of someone through murder. It could be through divorce. It could be through imprisonment, where one of the parents are in prison. That's a loss to a child.
Yeah.
And we had a child who lost his dad, and his dad was in prison, and he came to us. So we take a loss, whatever that looks like, and we just want to give our children the opportunity to know that they're not alone and everything is free. And the only criteria is that you have to have lost someone. That's the only thing that's our only rule.
Thank you, Ms. Pat, for coming on again. Everyone, I hope you were able to get something out of this to help yourself or to help someone else. But please tune in next week right here, same time, same place, 12:15 on cmpradio.net to check out next week's Mental Health Awareness Month topic. We will see you then. Ms. Pat, thank you so much.
Thank you. God bless you all. Thank you.
You too.
Bye-bye.
I'm glad to hear you are protected, and thanks for being so honest here on Keeping It